So what is the growth paradox that the Indian economy went through? This is the time period of 2000, almost say 1995 onwards till 2010. Okay, this is the growth paradox decade. What happened? In this decade, huge amount of investments came, huge amount of the economic growth happened very well, all this worked. So, who are the major beneficiaries of this growth? Who are the major beneficiaries of this growth? The major beneficiaries of this growth was private sector. Major beneficiaries of this growth was private sector. Large corporate houses came into picture, huge development in private sector, right? India had large multinational companies that came across in the private sector. So, the biggest beneficiary was private sector. On the other side, who funded this growth story? Right? So, beneficiary of this growth decade was private sector. Who funded this growth story? Where did money come from? The money came from public sector banks. So, the growth paradox was such that all the growth happened in private sector, but the funding for that growth came from public sector banks. Right, that's the paradox. If the public sector bank is funding public sector growth, that's understood. If the private banks are funding private sector, that's understood. But here, the public sector banks are funding the growth of private sector. That was the growth paradox. Is it wrong? Nothing wrong. As long as it is for the right purpose, not illegal, totally fine, right? But this was the paradox, that all the funding came from public sector banks and what growth happened was in private sector. Are we clear? Yes? So, growth happened in private sector, the funding came from public sector banks. Are we clear? All of us? Yes? Okay? This is the understanding that we are looking at in terms, growth paradox wise. Now, what is that the economic survey witnesses? It picturizes a very beautiful scenario. Right, it says, it takes India and USA as an example and says in this time period between 1995 to 2010, in India, 100 companies opened and in USA, 100 companies opened. By the end of 2010, out of these 100 companies, in USA, only 15 of them survived. But in India, out of these 100 companies, 80 of them survived. Out of the 100 companies, in India, 80 of them survived by end of 2010. And in USA, only 15 survived, 15. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ವಾ? 100 ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಓಪನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ 80 ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ 15 ಮಾತ್ರ ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡು. ವೆರಿ ನೈಸ್, ರೈಟ್? ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇಸ್ ಗ್ರೋಯಿಂಗ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆಲ್, 80 ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಅಮೆರಿಕಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ 15 ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೆ, ವಿಚ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ 85 ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಮುಚ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿವೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿ ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್. Now it goes on to say the next story. Out of the 15 companies that remained in America, 5 of them were $1 million companies, 5 of them in very good profits, and 5 of them in decent profits. Okay? 15 companies only, 5 $1 million companies, very huge companies, 5 of them in very good profits, if not very huge, but very good profits. The other 5 in good profits. This was the nature of that 15 that survived. Now, what about the 80 of India? Out of the 80 in India, more than 50 to 60 of them were in loss, still surviving. About 10 of them were in some loss, some profit, still surviving. 5 of them were in some profits and 5 of them in very good profits. This was India's story. You see the difference? Right, when we take the first data, but between this 1995 to 2010, out of 100, in America only 15 survived, but in India 80 survived. We feel good. But now look at this story. Out of that 15, 5 are $1 million companies, 5 of them are approximately doing very good profits, and 5 of them are in good profits. But in India, out of the 80, 50 to 60 are in very bad loss, still surviving. 5 of them, 10 of them are profit loss still surviving. 5 of them in good profits, doing fine. This is the story of India. Which one is good? Which one is good? Obviously the American story. Now question arises, why? What was such that in India, out of 180 survived, but such was the condition, but in America out of 800, only 15 survived in such good condition. Why? Now what were the reforms, if you have to summarize the reforms? If you have to summarize the reforms were encouraging, right, coming in. So it was opening up the market. So the LPG reforms had attracted a lot of investment. So you had created a red carpet. Correct? The change in mindset was from a red tape to red carpet. What is red tape? Red tape is bureaucracy anta. That's how it is called. Red tape andre, no, wait, control, right? Listen to us, ask us, then only come. Ee riti irodu red tape. From red tape to red carpet andre, banni anta welcoming it. That was the nature of change. So LPG reforms, red carpet idea. Then further you have pitched in where you have reduced restrictions. Government is now just a regulator, right? Many times a facilitator. You have brought in many reforms such that it doesn't affect the economy as such. Okay, banking reforms andvi, ella sectors allu reforms andvi, idella madidira. The nature, the mindset of the economy has changed that from a socialist mindset, we have now transformed into a near capitalist mindset. I will not say completely capitalist, a near capitalist mindset. This has been the change. In spite of all this kind of a problem. Why? In spite of all this kind of a problem, why? Right, how do we understand? Effectively, with all these reforms, what did we create? With all these reforms, we created what we call as what is called as ease of entry. Right? ಅಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ ಲೈಸೆನ್ಸ್, ಕೋಟಾ, ಪರ್ಮಿಟ್ಸ್, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ತಿನ್ಸು, ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ತಿನ್ಸು, ಆಲ್ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಟ್ರಬಲ್ 92 onwards. But after 1992 reforms and new economic policy, you have created an ease of entry, right? Most of the regulations are eased, open up the market, right? Create a regime where government will just facilitate you coming in. Everything has been made easy. So what have you created? Ease of entry has been created. Right? But while you created ease of entry, you did not think about, while you created ease of entry, you did not think about so yes, from a largely socialist mindset, we transformed into a capitalist mindset. Economy opened up, new industries, all that happened very well. Ease of entry was created, but what was not created? Ease of exit was not created. This put the economy into a very tight spot. This put the economy into a very tight spot.